Y'all know what's going on. It's time for another episode of Doing Time with Joe. I'm your host, Joe Bacon. Welcome to the show, y'all. Some stories start loud. Blood, alarms, steel doors slamming shut like God got angry. This one didn't start like that. It started with something quieter, smaller, and more personal. It started with a toothbrush, and not a weapon, not a stash spot, not some contraband you throw in a vent. Just a simple thing with plastic bristles, the kind of thing they give you an intake that looks like it came out of a cereal box. But in prison, the tiny things carry all the meaning you can't afford to say out loud. Especially when you're stuck living 3 feet away from a stranger for months at a time. That stranger in this case was a dude named Tyrone Macklin. He came into my cell on a Monday afternoon after lunch, right after they released us from midday. Count Big CO named Patterson cracked my door and nodded toward him. "Baker, this your new bunkmate. Don't let him set the place on fire." Prison humor. Tyrone walked in holding his property bag like it contained the last pieces of his soul. He had that jittery, fresh transfer energy, trying to act confident but reading the room like he was measuring it for danger. "Peace, old head," he said, like he'd rehearsed it. I looked up from tightening my bootlaces. "Don't call me old head. Name's Joe." He smiled like I told a joke. "Bet, I'm Tyrone." He tossed his bag on the top bunk and started unpacking. Slow, methodical, like someone taught him to survive chaos by making small things neat. Commissary soups in one row, snacks in another, 2 pairs of socks folded like he was trying to impress the warden. While he worked, we played that mandatory getting to know you game inmates play whether they want to or not. Where you from, what you did, how much time you hold in Chattanooga's robbery? 10 years. Says he didn't do it, which in prison means he definitely did it. But I didn't judge. I done seen innocent men guilty and guilty men play victim better than preachers. For the first week, Tyrone was cool, real cool. He picked up after himself. He stayed quiet during sleep hours, didn't burn the TV time, didn't bring messy dudes to the door, didn't ask me for commissary like some newbies do, but I watched him. Because you're supposed to. Because one wrong dude in tight space can drag you into fights you didn't start, or get you locked down for something that ain't even yours. He talked a lot at night, mostly about his little boy, and worrying if the kid would recognize him when he got out. I just nod or grunt, pretending to be half asleep while he let his life spill out like a leaky faucet. He was comfortable around me too fast. That's always a red flag. Then the little thing started. It began with my cup. One afternoon I came back from laundry duty and found it sitting on the wrong side of the sink, still dripping water. "You use this?" "Yeah, man, my bad. I rinsed it out good, though." Then my radio. Knob twisted to a station full of static. Didn't say anything the first time. Second time I did, "Yo, stop touching my stuff." "Joe, we cellies. This like family." Prison family ain't family. It's just a polite word for boundaries don't exist here. And people with no boundaries eventually trip over yours like it's nothing. Still, it was small stuff. Annoying but manageable. What happened next crossed the line we don't even talk about crossing. It was a Sunday evening, locked down for a minor incident on level C, meaning no showers, no day room, no phones, just 4 walls. And whatever thoughts came crawling out of the vents, I was lying on the top bunk, hands behind my head, thinking about nothing special, life, mistakes, what I'd eat if I ever touched a real kitchen again. Tyrone was pacing. He did that when he was anxious. Heel toe, like he was wearing out a groove in the floor only he could see. "You good?" I asked, and he shrugged, and just thinking, hate being boxed in. Eventually, he quieted down and walked to the sink above the toilet, turned the faucet on, water trickled. Then I heard this scratching sound, soft, rhythmic, like a brush working against porcelain. Didn't think much at first. Some dudes clean as therapy. Some clean because they bored. Some clean because they trying to impress the COS. Then something felt off. I leaned over the bunk rail. Tyrone was crouched beside the toilet, one hand holding the bowl and the other scrubbing inside it like he was polishing a trophy, and that's when I saw it. The toothbrush in his hand wasn't his, it was mine. Same longer handle, same brand I only buy on store week, same tiny scratch mark I made so I'd never mix it up. I froze. My heartbeat didn't even speed up at first. It slowed down like my body needed time to understand what my eyes were seeing. Cleanliness in prison, that ain't just hygiene, it's dignity, it's control. It's the one ritual the state can't strip from you, and he took mine and scrubbed the toilet with it. Tyrone, my voice came out low, dangerously steady. He jerked like I caught him committing murder. Oh, I ain't know you was awake. He tried to smile, but his lips didn't cooperate. What you doing? Cleaning the toilet, he muttered. With what? A brush? Whose brush? That last question landed like a thrown brick. He swallowed. He said, the air got heavy then. Heavy in a way anger can't explain. Cleaning the toilet ain't the issue. We all gotta clean it. But using my toothbrush to do it, that's violation on a spiritual level. How long you been using it? Silence, then the lie. Just now, bro. Only this once. I stared at him until the lie crumbled. He exhaled slow. Maybe once before, but only 'cause the bowl was nasty and I ain't have no rag. Throw it away. He blinked hard. Joe dash, throw it away. He picked it up like it was radioactive and dropped it into the trash. I watched the bag sway, watched the handle stick out like a reminder of how stupid trust can be. You can't unknow something like that. You can't unbrush your teeth with a toilet brush you didn't know was a toilet brush. I felt sick to my stomach, imagining all those mornings I thought I tasted rust in the water. I sat on the edge of my bunk, elbows on my knees, hands hanging, trying to process the 1,000 little violations that led to this one. He stood there like a kid waiting to be grounded. Joe, man, don't make it a big deal. We in prison. Everything dirty. That right there told me everything I needed to know about him. A man who thinks everything's already filthy don't mind spreading filth around. I didn't hit him, didn't choke him, didn't drag him by the shirt to the bars like part of me wanted. I just lay back down and turned away. Because the thing about betrayal in prison is, once it happens, the relationship is dead. Completely dead. You can't fix it. You can't talk it out. You just coexist until you find a way to get distance. Tyrone eventually climbed into his bunk. Didn't say goodnight. Didn't move much. Probably lay there wide awake like I did. But I wasn't thinking about revenge. Not yet. I was thinking about every small sign I ignored before this one big truth smacked me in the face. A man who doesn't respect the smallest boundary will eventually destroy the biggest one. He didn't break my cup. He didn't steal my radio. He didn't take my commissary. He took something far worse than my sense of safety in my own space. He didn't move out the cell that night, but something did. Whatever thin thread was tying us together as cellies snapped. After that, everything between us was off. He walked softer, talked less to me, more to everybody else, and I stopped seeing him as a man I shared space with and started seeing him as a liability I had to manage. In here, once you know you can't trust the person who sleeps 6 feet away from you, you don't ever really rest. Next morning, he tried to hit me with regular conversation like nothing happened. Yo, Joe, you see the schedule? They letting us out late for chow. I just looked at him, said nothing. He laughed awkward. Come on, man, you still on that toothbrush thing? Still, I said, "Let something die that fast in your world?" He shook his head, grabbed his tray, and left the cell. I stayed back a second, staring at the trash can. Toothbrush still lay there, handle greasy from old plastic bristles bent in weird directions. I reached in, not to use it, just to look at it one more time. It wasn't about the brush. It was about what he'd been willing to do while humming. A man who can hum while he's disrespecting you is more dangerous than one who screams in your face, and at least the screamer knows there's a line. The humming man thinks there ain't one. They popped the doors for chow, and we filed out into the tier. Word travels fast in closed spaces even when nobody says anything directly. I could feel the air shifting when I walked past certain cells. Little smirks, quick eye contact, and then a look away. You can always tell when your name's been in somebody else's mouth. At the table, one of the younger dudes, Jameer from the next pod over, leaned forward with that grin dudes get when they know something they ain't supposed to know. "All right, Joe," he said, "you really throwing folks away over a toothbrush now?" There it was. Tyrone kept his eyes on his tray like it was fascinating. "Nah," I said, calm. "I throw folks away over disrespect." Jameer laughed. "Man, this prison, that toilet cleaner than half these dudes' mouths anyway." I stared at him until he got uncomfortable. Let the silence sit, heavy enough to make him shift in his seat. "You ever had somebody put something in your food?" I asked him. He frowned at that. "Then you don't know what you're talking about," I said. "Once you find out the person feeding you been tampering with your plate, you don't just eat around it. You don't scrape it off. You don't move on. You change how you look at the whole kitchen." Jamie didn't say nothing else. He poked at his cornbread like it personally offended him. I wasn't mad at the kid. That's the thing. Out there, people look at stories like this and think it's about overreacting. In here, it's about surviving 1,000 small cuts without letting one of them turn into an infection that kills you. After chow, back in the cell, Tyrone tried the fake peace offering route. He pulled a fresh toothbrush out of his property, one of the cheap blue ones he traded somebody for. "All right, Joe, look," he said. "I got you a new one. Still in the wrapper, see? Ain't nobody touched it." He held it up between two fingers like it was a peace treaty. I didn't even look at it long. "That ain't the point," I told him. "You can't throw money at trust. It don't work like that in here." "So what you want me to do?" He snapped, some of that attitude finally dripping through. "Write you an apology card or something?" "I want you to understand," I said, "that you showed me how you think. And once I know that, I can't unknow it." He scoffed. "You act like I tried to kill you. You tried to erase my dignity and call it cleaning," I said back. "And then you tried to laugh it off. That's worse than if you just swung on me." He shook his head, turned away, started pacing again. That's when I realized something important. He wasn't sorry. He was inconvenienced. There's a difference. The next few days, we lived in a cold war. We didn't argue loud enough for the COS to hear. We didn't throw hands. We just stopped being two men trying to coexist and turned into two enemies stuck in the same shoebox. He coughed louder when I prayed at night. I flushed longer when he was trying to sleep. Little petty things. But under all that, the big thing sat there. The toothbrush in the trash. Like a body nobody wanted to claim. Then the rumors started to mutate. One afternoon on the yard, this dude Calvin walked by and said with a smirk, "You the hygiene police now, Joe?" "Explain," I said. He chuckled. "Man, your bunkie say you act like you too good for the rest of us. Don't want nobody touching your stuff because you think you still on the street." I nodded slowly. "Yeah? That what he said?" Calvin shrugged. "I don't get in it. I'm just saying what I heard. Prison gossip is like mold. Don't take much darkness for it to spread." I didn't go check Tyrone right then. Didn't drag him to the side, didn't confront him in front of everybody. I just filed it away. He crossed me in the cell. Now he was trying to cross me in the narrative, make me look like the crazy one, like I was the problem. So I did what men in my position do when we trying not to end up in seg for stomping somebody out. I started working on a movie. You can't always pick your silly. But sometimes if you play it right, you can pick your distance. I started dropping little seeds with the unit manager. Nothing dramatic, just steady. Yeah, me and Macklin different types, I'd say during random conversations. He young, still got a lot of energy. We don't see eye to eye on how to keep the seal. Did the same thing with a CO I knew paid attention. Be good if y'all placed him with somebody closer to his age. Somebody who don't mind all that traffic, I'd say. Never once mentioned the toothbrush. Never framed it so it sounded like I was snitching. Snitching gets you hurt or worse. Strategic truth-telling gets you moved. While all that was brewing inside the cell, the tension simmered. Bedtime routines changed. I kept my new toothbrush hidden deep in my property box, only bringing it out right before use. I'd stand at the sink, brush, rinse, dry it with my own towel, then lock it back up. Tyrone would watch me out the corner of his eye. Sometimes he'd shake his head and mutter, "This man really think I'm gonna touch it again." I never answered. I wasn't talking to that man anymore. I was just sharing oxygen with him. One night, he decided he was tired of the silence. He came back from the day room extra animated, extra loud. "Man, you making me look crazy out there," he said, closing the door a little harder than usual. "Dude's acting like I'm some kind of monster, 'cause you mad about a hygiene slip." "A hygiene slip?" I repeated. He threw his hands up. "Bro, you talking like I spit in your food. I scrubbed the toilet. I didn't wipe my ass with your towel. You extra." I stood up slow, stepped closer, but not close enough to touch. Just close enough to let him see the part of me that used to handle everything with violence. "You right," I said. "You didn't spit in my food. You did worse than that. You made me eat lies. Every time you called me big bro, every time you said we family, you was hiding the fact that you thought so little of me you'd stick my brush in that bowl and then put it back like nothing happened." He opened his mouth to argue, then shut it again. There wasn't a comeback for that. He sat down hard on his bunk, eyes wet but too proud to let it fall. He wasn't a complete monster, just selfish. And selfishness in here gets magnified like sunlight through a broken window. A couple days later, CO came to the door with a clipboard. "Macklin, roll your stuff. You getting moved." I looked up from my bunk. Tyrone froze. "Moved where?" "Different cell, same unit. Don't matter where. Grab your bag and follow directions." Relief washed over me like a quiet shower. Not the noisy joy dudes show when they beat a case. Just that subtle unclenching in your shoulders when you realize you ain't got to sleep with one eye open on the man in the next bunk. Tyrone packed slow, stealing glances at me, waiting for me to say something like, "Good luck," or "No hard feelings," or "It's all love." I didn't. Right before he left, he stopped at the door. "Joe," he said, voice low, "you really gonna freeze me out over this? Forever?" I looked up at him. "You froze yourself out the moment you decided I was worth less than a clean bowl." He swallowed, nodded, and walked out without another word. Door slid shut behind him, and the cell felt bigger instantly, not physically, spiritually. Later on the yard, somebody came up to me, dude named Antoine. He'd been watching everything from a distance. "Hey, Joe," he said, "you really cut homie off over that toothbrush thing, huh?" "I cut him off because he showed me he wasn't safe," I said. Antoine nodded slowly. "Yeah," he said. "I had a bunkie once who used to spit in my soda when I wasn't looking. Found out because he bragged about it to somebody else later. Me and him, yeah, we ain't never come back from that either." We stood there a minute, two grown men in brown uniforms talking about toothbrushes and sodas like they were gunshots and betrayals. And in here they kind of are. See, on the street, people think trust gets broken in these big cinematic ways. Caught cheating, stealing thousands, setting you up with the police. But in prison, trust usually dies in the sink, or on a fork, or in a bowl, or on a toothbrush, because that's all you really got left to your name. What you put in your body, what you sleep on, what you wash with, you mess with that. You're not just crossing a line. You erasing a man's last thin layer of humanity. I got a new cellie a few weeks later. First thing I told him wasn't where you from, or wasn't what you in for, wasn't how much time you got. First thing I told him was that right there is your toothbrush. This right here is mine. We don't touch each other's, and we don't play about it. You can borrow soup, radio, whatever we agree on, but hygiene, that's sacred. He looked me dead in my eyes and said, "I bet I feel the same way." I believed him. And if I'd ever caught him proving me wrong, I would have handled it the same way I handled Tyrone. Not with a knife, not with a fighter, but with distance. Because in a place where they already decided you ain't worth much, the only real power you still got is the right to decide who gets close to you. Not everybody understands that. Some folks think letting everything slide makes them peaceful. All it really makes them is a doormat with a DOC number. So if you listening to this on the outside, hearing me talk about a toothbrush like it changed my life, believe me when I tell you it did. Not because of the plastic, not because of the bristles, but because of what it taught me about people. If a man feels comfortable putting your toothbrush in the toilet, there's no telling where else he'll put your name. This has been another episode of Doing Time with Joe. I'm your host, Joe Baker, and I say peace, y'all.